know who has access to what? This is the Identity at the Center podcast. If you're looking for identity and access management talk, you've come to the right place. And now, on to the show.
Welcome to another episode of the Identity at the Center podcast. I'm Jeff, and as always, with me is Jim. Hey, Jim.
Hey, Jeff.
How you doing? Happy Thanksgiving.
It's my favorite holiday, so happy Thanksgiving to you as well.
So what makes it your favorite holiday?
It's the fact that it's centered on eating food and giving thanks. And those are two things that I enjoy thoroughly.
There are worse answers to have, that's for sure.
Yeah, I enjoy a good Christmas along with the rest of them, but so much preparation required and things like that. And, Thanksgiving does require a little preparation, but it's time to take a break. It's also the beginning of the holiday season in the U.S. And it's kind of like from Thanksgiving week on, things really slow down, and it's a time to kind of close out the year and get ready for the next year.
Yeah, it's like
so
this mad dash here for the end of the year to kind of get things done. I would argue that it takes more, that there is more preparation involved for Thanksgiving, because I think of family and cooking these big dinners and trying to, play host for people who are hosting all the people coming over their place and those sorts of things. But I think it's a fun stress, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, when do you start Christmas shopping?
December 21st or 22nd.
Yeah, there you go. So
I'm a procrastinator by far.
You know what the worst thing though is if you're counting on Amazon Prime, and so you're thinking, I'm going to get free 2-day shipping. I'm going to order on the 22nd, and it'll be here on the 24th. Good luck with that.
Yeah,
so I've done that, and that is not a good strategy.
Yeah, I feel like they have enough messages that go out there at this point, basically telling people that you need to order by this date if you want to get guaranteed Christmas delivery. So I don't think it's anyone's fault other than the person making the order and not paying attention. That's a unrealistic expectation, I think, to have. Yeah.
So like I think you said, Thanksgiving's kind of a fun stress, and that Christmas stress just gets me every year.
Yeah. But it's the holidays, friends, family, gifts, not gifts. It really doesn't matter at that part, but spending time with people you like, hopefully, and hopefully getting some time off from work, or at least being able to take a little bit of a break. I go back to my restaurant days where I'd always, either bartending or waiting tables, and these were the prime times to make money, and you'd work long hours going into the holidays and so forth. So shout out to all my veterans on the food service industry that are out there.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's Thanksgiving. Thought maybe we could put together a list of things in the identity and access management world that we're thankful for. So I know that I have a few. I know that you've got a few. And we also put a poll out there. I put it on my LinkedIn page and got some responses from folks who saw that. Also polled a few people from our own company here at Identropy to get some thoughts on that. So why don't we...
Did anyone answer that they're thankful for the Identity at the Center podcast?
Someone did, and I assumed it was you filling out the form. So if that was you, good job. If it wasn't you, then that makes me feel even better. We certainly have grown our listening base over the last several weeks, which is great.
I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for all of our listeners, all the 5-star reviews we've been getting. Just very thankful. You've been talking about doing this podcast for almost as long as I've known you, and this year we finally just said, let's do it. And I got to give most of the credit to you, Jeff, because even though I'm here every week, you're doing all the hard work behind the scenes of pulling this together and making sure that we do it. And then the editing, I don't know how many hours you put into that, but I'm thankful for you, Jeff.
I appreciate that. I think we make a good team on it. And as shocking as it sounds, there is very little editing that we do to this. Most of the episodes that go out and people hear this is how we recorded it. This is just two guys talking, or maybe we have a guest, talking about different things than IAM. it's pretty rare that I have to make any, real severe edits to cut large swaths out. It's usually trimming the front, trimming the back, and then making sure that the levels sound as good as they can for, me and my froggy voice and you and your golden pipes.
Oh, well, I have a feeling that this week could be a technical challenge. So if our audio is poor, we apologize in advance. But Jeff is at a hotel in Mexico. Their internet is not the best. I can already tell you. I've heard you make that digitized voice a couple times.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, it is what it is. It's not perfect, but this is what you got.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Well, let's dig in. So let's start with you. What's the first thing on your list of IAM things that you are thankful for, other than the podcast, of course?
Right. So identity and access management, I've been in this industry for 15 years and it's just different. And I kind of fell in love with this industry back in '06. I was at a conference called Digital ID World. And the kind of philosophical debates people were having around what is an identity, it just got me like, wow. I mean, these are conversations that I don't hear people talking about any other part of IT. Certainly not the infrastructure and web application areas that I kind of grew out of. And I really love that there were so many small startup companies with, trying to take on big problems like passwords, like or how, the problem of passwords being that they stink, right? Everybody universally agrees with that. But how do you get rid of them? This is 15 years ago. We're still all using tons of passwords. And, some of those small guys usurp the big guys. So 15 years ago, it was Oracle, actually Oracle and CA were just getting into the market maybe 14 years ago, like '07, '08 timeframe when Oracle bought Oblix and CA bought Integrity and IBM was already in the space. But those guys were that was what identity and access management was. And Microsoft had a little piece, but they weren't the company that they are today. And you look at where things are, and those guys are falling further and further out of the picture. And guys like SailPoint and Okta, those are the companies, and Ping, and those companies are getting a lot of the recognition now, and they're really the leaders in the market.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah, the new vendors have definitely injected a lot of innovation and enthusiasm into the space. I feel like there's a lot more competition nowadays, which is great for customers and fans of seeing, IAM move forward. If you think about where IAM was, even 10 years ago, and password reset processes and, access requests and, the pipe dream of being able to request your own access and have an interface that worked, having deployed a couple of those, and being a customer of these products, they were definitely oversold. And now that there's a lot of competition, I think, and especially in the main markets of like identity governance and privileged access management and access management itself, things like SSO and multi-factor, I think that helps everyone on our side, and it keeps companies on their toes. And just, competition is great for everyone.
It's a cool industry, and who will be the leaders in 10 years? That's anyone's guess.
Yeah, I'm sure someone has already, created the replacement for Active Directory, and there'll be something in 10 years that will be the de facto kind of enterprise standard for a directory. Is it blockchain? I don't know. I'm not really convinced that there's an enterprise use case for it yet. But, there has to be something out there that has already been created that either we don't know about yet or is, just about to break. I'm the ever optimist when it comes to the directories.
Yes. So what do you have? What's on your list for thankful items?
Yeah, so I think, and this is something that I've noticed over really especially the last year, but started to see it at the end of 2018, and that was more organizations really taking a step back and treating IAM as a program and putting together a strategy before they would start doing things, just to do things from a tactical perspective. So, that's probably a little bit biased just because, you and I work on the advisory services side. So that's what we do, and we help organizations. But it seems like the demand for that type of service has really kind of taken off over the last year or so. And, I think the good advice of, hey, you should have a plan before you build something is starting to get recognized, more when it comes to, the organizations that are out there.
Yeah. I think that, it's probably always been the right move to have a strategy, have a plan before you act. So, but I agree with you. I think that, I think what it is that people have been burned over the years and had moved on vendor promises, and some companies have been successful and others have suffered from it. And so, those sufferings leave deep scars.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is that there's just so much to know now. It's very difficult to truly be a very deep generalist when it comes to IT. So identity access management itself is its own niche within information security, which is within IT. And the pace of change and evolution in this space has been pretty radical over the last few years. So I think people are recognizing, like, hey, you know what? I don't necessarily feel comfortable in this space. Let's bring in somebody who is. And that probably applies to multiple areas from a technology standpoint, where technologies have gotten, very specific, and there's so much to know now that people are looking for help with different areas.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, what do you got next?
All right. So I'm just thankful for, a certain type of technology specifically, which is multi-factor authentication, and how ubiquitous it's becoming. I really think it's, layering, whether it's an SMS, which we know is not great, or an email, or better yet, an authenticator application to a phone. But then layer on top of that the biometrics available with phone devices and being built into all types of devices today. I'm just thankful for that, because I think strong authentication is exponentially stronger than usernames and passwords. Passwords stink. All right. I'm just going to say, that's the bold statement of the year.
Wow.
Passwords stink. Yeah.
Ready to hear hot take from Jim McDonald that passwords aren't good.
Passwords aren't good. And so, yeah, nothing earth shattering there, but I think that's, you see it everywhere now. And, I think it's actually getting to the point where users actually expect it. We used to find a lot of organizations say, well, we can't ask our users to do that. And now it's like, I think people get it. Like, if you're not asking your user to use multi-factor for anything that has sensitive data, especially financial data or healthcare data, then your users are going to say, well, you're not really protecting my data. That worries me. And I think people are starting to get that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you're definitely not the only one. I definitely agree on the MFA side. The little poll or form that I put out there on LinkedIn, a lot of people that responded had MFA as the thing that they were most thankful for, helping people protect themselves, from their own bad passwords, that sort of thing. I feel like I wish more companies would still continue to offer MFA to their customers. I feel like organizations are doing a good job taking care of their employees and their contractors, the internal side of it. But I still want to see more companies do it for their customers as well. And I would argue that if you do not provide an MFA option to your customers, that you're not doing enough from a security standpoint to keep them safe. It doesn't necessarily have to be a mandatory option, but if you're not at least offering it for the customer to take advantage of, if they so choose, at least at this point, I don't think you're doing enough. And I think that you're not even doing the minimum that would be acceptable in this day and age. So that's my hot take.
I agree. Yeah, no, especially if you're collecting credit card numbers or anything like that. It just, if you're storing people's even PII, which almost every website is, I think you're right. I think the bar has now been set that some form of MFA should be the option of the user at the minimum.
Yeah. And I'm thinking of a certain organization that I've worked with in the past, and they're not the only ones, but there is this thought process on the business executive side, that if the password strength is too weak, that people won't want to use their product because it's too hard. And I'm sorry, I don't buy that one bit.
Right.
It's you're willingly sacrificing your users' security, which leads directly back to the organization if there is a breach, because it's too hard to type in a password. I mean, I get it. There's people who aren't as technical and maybe struggle with the password process. But I think in this day and age that those folks are in the minority, and more people are becoming aware of this. Everyone, at least that I can think of, has a bank account and is aware of how to log into that. And I just don't buy people aren't going to use our app if they have to type in too hard of a password.
Right.
Get rid of the password. Offer MFA and do passwordless authentication.
I think anybody who's had to deal with a major breach would not be making the argument that that person made to you. And I think that's a point that I've brought up on the podcast a few times, is that we work with clients who, when they experience a breach, all of a sudden, it's like you see a major investment in one particular area. The analogy I used recently was, do you realize how much money I've wasted on homeowners insurance? My house has never burned down. I've been paying for homeowners insurance for 20 years. Knock on wood, my house has never burned down. So I wasted my money. No, you have to have it as insurance, and that, having stronger security controls is a form of insurance.
Yep, that peace of mind. What is that worth it to the organization and the risk mitigation?
Right.
Anyway, all right, I'm going to get off my soapbox. So you were talking about MFA.
Yes, that was mine.
Okay. My next one that I'm thinking about here is probably more personal, and that's that I feel like there's always something new in the IAM space. And I'm sure there's others that have that same feeling that, just when you were thinking, hey, I'm getting a handle on this IAM thing, and, I feel like I've got it down, something comes along, knocks you down a peg or two for a little bit, and you're like, oh man, I'm not as smart as I thought I was, or what the heck is that? And that's part of one of the reasons, though, that I also like this job, being able to experience that and continuing to grow and to learn new things is a good incentive for me from this role. But it's always frustrating when something comes along, and I feel like that came along earlier this year when I was trying to figure out this whole blockchain identity thing, and I'm still searching for an enterprise use case for it. I know we talked about blockchain a couple weeks ago, I think it was, but I still don't see the enterprise use case. And maybe, I don't know if that's me just being ignorant still, and I need to do more research and talking with people and seeing what their thoughts are, or maybe there isn't a use case right now for it that makes sense. Maybe there will be in the future. So that whole thought of, something new and never quite kind of feeling on top of things is something that I'm thankful for, because it keeps me on my toes.
Right. I feel like that's one of the great things about IAM and IT as a career path. I go back and forth between, I need more technical skills, so I'll go and research something like OpenID Connect and OAuth2, and really, getting deep on that for a while, and then I'll realize, I need to, focus on frameworks and industry regulations, privacy regulations, how to make a better business case. I go back and forth between kind of the business side of things and the technology side of things. Maybe partially that's because of my role, but I think, even deep technology people need to understand the business environment and what that means from whether it's a regulation side of things or just how businesses operate. And I think business folks really, to be, more well-rounded, need to understand something about the technology. So, yeah, I mean, that's where I think IAM is great. Is it's really an intersection between business and technology. The technology is right in your face when it comes to identity and access management.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. What's next on your list?
Next on my list is just something that I don't know if I'm seeing enough momentum on this, but it's something that I've seen a few organizations recently where it's kind of like light bulb moments, where understanding organizational governance and how to manage IAM as a program requires formality. So it's not just, sometimes when we start our engagement, Jeff, you'll see this, we'll say, do you guys have an IAM steering committee? Or do you have an IAM program manager? And somebody will say, well, I guess I'm the IAM program manager. And this group here, we're the steering committee. And you're like, well, when did you decide that? When I asked the question. So what I'm getting at is like, by the end of our engagements, usually organizations really understand, like, no, a steering committee has a formal membership, and it takes an IAM program has to have a 360-degree perspective. So it's not just the core IAM team, that's important, but it's stakeholder involvement. It's involvement from, interfacing with technology partners or consulting partners. It's, grassroots. So the operations team and project teams feeding in what's working well or what isn't working well. And then it's also, at the top of the organization, at the top of the pile, understanding where the IAM program wants to head, what are the problems, what are the solutions, and also pushing down, this is what the business needs. These are the areas where we need IAM to help make us successful. And I feel like, formality is a message that makes sense to a lot of people, even in smaller organizations. It doesn't have to be a 50,000 person organization for this to make sense. But I think that most of our clients who are coming and saying we need a strategy also realize that they don't just need the zeros and ones. They also need, what is the framework? What is the formal process by which we can run this as a program? Everybody knows IAM is a program, not a project, but what does that really mean?
It's not easy. It's hard, because if it was easy, everyone would be doing it.
What do you think that one key is, though? What is the most important first thing that an IAM program should have?
An owner.
Yeah, an IAM program manager, or what we call program manager, but you're right.
Yeah. I love asking that questions when we're working, and kind of investigating how things work is, who owns IAM? And people look around the room and they might point at one person or they might point at different people, and that person doesn't know that they own it. I mean, it's always kind of like an eye-opening moment. It's like, okay, so no one owns IAM. All right, well, someone should, and that person, should probably know that they own IAM so that they can start to make plans around that.
Do you ever get the feeling that people get offended when you ask that question?
No, I don't think so, because I think they realize that, they probably realize that they don't know who owns IAM and that they're looking for clarity as well. So if it sounds, and if it feels like it's a tough guy question, it's not meant in that method or in that vein. And I think people kind of get it. So I've never really had any pushback on it. Yeah. If anything, I think people like it.
I've seen you lay the question out a few times, and I remember some people saying, well, what do you mean? Right? Well, what do you mean? Like, and I think that in some respect, people are like, what's your angle here? And it's really, the angle is like, who's driving this thing? Somebody needs to say, put IAM on their back and just run with it. And I'll tell you, this should be on the list. This should have been number one on the list of thankful. Being an IAM program manager is a fantastic career move. I mean, if you can run an IAM program, you can work with the business, you can work with technologists. And the thing is, like, nobody wants to sign up to be the IAM program manager in a lot of places. If you're like signing up for it, you're going to put this thing on your back. You're going to work the extra hours. You're going to deal with not getting what you need all the time and kind of, quote unquote, fighting the political battles. So that's part of it. But you're gonna get to build your finesse and build your executive skills, I guess, is probably the best term for it. Is just you're gonna show that you can run a program. And you're not going to find many programs that are more difficult in the IT space to run than IAM.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think maybe sometimes people get intimidated by maybe being an IAM program manager. I don't personally feel that you need to be super technical in that role, because theoretically you're going to have, technical people as part of the project and the team, the program, but you do need to understand the theories, the concepts, how things, work together. And most importantly, how do you communicate that to the organization and build those relationships? The shaking the hands and the kissing the babies and the politics of it all. And sometimes the politics are easy and sometimes they're more Game of Thrones, but being able to navigate that and build relationships with others in the organization, I think that's more important, especially in the beginning around the technical side of things, because you can always get the technical help, I think, easier than the organizational understanding.
You're right on with that, and that is the harder part because it's not something you can grasp onto and just say, "Oh, I understand OpenID Connect," or "I understand access management or governance." That's great, but can you get people to buy into your ideas? Can you horse trade, if you will, to get what you need? Those are the kind of skills. And here's the thing: I think you have to play to your strengths. So if you're coming from a technical background, maybe you move through project management, and now you have an opportunity to run an IAM program. I mean, it's the next step up. So, I think if your strength has been a technical background, you say, I don't know how to do all these politics and stuff. What I would recommend is read a lot of business and, Harvard Business Review type articles and magazines or books. Just become a sponge for that stuff and start realizing that you need to be 360 degrees. You need to be well-rounded. That's what I think makes the best IAM program manager is somebody who's well-rounded.
I think we could probably do like a TED talk on being an IAM program manager.
Hey, maybe we'll have to do that one of these days.
Maybe if only we had like this platform where we could spout off our own nonsense and ideas. Maybe that could do something someday.
We should start a podcast, Chef.
Nah, that'll never work.
So what do you have next?
Let's see. Standards, which I think a lot of people who wrote in and filled out that survey, a lot of people were very thankful for standards. So things like FIDO, OAuth, SAML, SCIM, OIDC, trying to think what else is out there. There's acronym soup out there when it comes to standards, but I think standards are a good thing. And a lot of people are thankful of that because it allows a lot of different technologies to kind of play together and have more integrations. And I think that also dovetails a little bit into the second part of my thankful, and that's companies realizing that it's a lot better to play together than not. It used to be, we're this giant suite of software and, you play in our ballpark and that's it. And now there's a lot more independent products out there that have built alliances to fill the gaps that they don't do as well and play together well. So I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, proprietary has become a dirty word. Some of the other standards, it's more basic, not IAM specific standards, but like HTML and TCP/IP. Those are standards that we maybe take for granted, but build on top of those things like REST APIs. That is really, and things that are happening in the DevOps community. Those are standards that are revolutionizing the way IAM is delivered. Software as a service model, revolutionizing IAM, infrastructure as a service, and what's happening out at Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure, and the ability to host infrastructure and platforms, revolutionizing IAM. And it'll never go back. Never go backwards from here. It's really what I'm thankful for in that whole space is like watching it evolve. And I think that companies that stay on top and stay ahead of those trends are the ones that will be the most successful. So I think that's fantastic thing to be thankful for.
What do you got next?
My next one and kind of my last one is just industry norms that are becoming that are gaining momentum. So it's very big, right? But what I had in mind was things like contractors moving into being managed by human resources. This is something that I've been in consulting for 8 years now, and what I didn't realize was, it was 8 years ago, it was almost a universal thing. Like no HR system had contractors in it. No HR group wanted to manage contractors. And I still think there's a lot of that attitude or perspective that exists still today. However, it's much less. It's much, much less. And we find a lot more organizations and HR groups willing to manage contractors. And even 8 years ago, I used to say, like, what is the role of HR? To me, the role of HR would be to manage the people that work there. Well, if that includes contractors, then there's that management of that as well. And to wash your hands of it doesn't seem to me to be, doing your job. I mean, I'm just going to say it. And so I feel like that attitude is, and I'm not sure why, but that's kind of becoming more and more pervasive, that HR is taking a role in making sure that those people are accounted for. And that really helps IAM because HR becomes the authoritative source, not only for employees, but also these non-employee users as well.
Yeah, I feel like it's human resource, not employee resources, unless they've specifically named it that way. So being able to track everyone in the organization has always been something that I think is important and just wasn't getting across. And I understand it, right? I've been in organizations where that's been the case, and it's the issues typically arise from we don't have the bandwidth, right? Enough resources, or it's too expensive to put them into the HR platform, those sorts of things. And then sometimes there's a legal thing because they don't want to do things, give off the impression of like co-employment. And I think it's turned a long way in the last several years where, people are taking it more into account, but I feel like there's still a ways to go to get that mindset out, and that an identity is an identity. It needs to be managed. Let's figure out how to make this work rather than just leaving contractors out like, a redhead stepchild somewhere.
The other thing that I was going to mention in this area was access reviews, and how I don't know if it's proliferation is the right word, or recognition by a lot of different companies and industries that access reviews provide a meaningful detective process for keeping their environment secure. I came out of the financial services industry, and doing access reviews was the norm. But when I got into consulting 8 years ago, very few other organizations were doing it. And now, I mean, almost every organization either does it or realizes that they need to do it. So you're not bringing up a brand new idea like, hey, you should be reviewing access, you should be correlating access that's in systems with the identities coming from human resources, and making sure that everybody is, all the accounts are accounted for. Again, that used to be something that it was like, people would look at you funny if you said they should be doing that. Now everybody seems to have a recognition that they should be doing it.
Yeah, I mean, they should be. I think a lot of companies want to do it, and they know they should be doing it, but they still struggle with the hows and the why, and not the whys, but the hows. Still organizations are sending out spreadsheets and having to deal with rubber stamping and all the things that kind of go on with it. But at least the recognition that they know they should be doing is out there, and things like SOX, right, definitely drove a lot of access review work, towards more robust processes around it.
Mm-hmm.
What else is on your list?
I have nothing else on my list, but I was interested to know what else came in through the survey. Anything that we didn't talk about yet?
Yeah, there were a few. So David mentioned that he was thankful for SaaS-based single sign-on, and he's thankful for it because it eliminates him having to create 50-page documents full of screenshots showing the installation of the product. Here, brother. Definitely.
This has been this has been one of my big perspectives that I've talked with clients a lot about, because when I got into IAM 15 years ago, I deployed a product called Oblix, and it was a old school access management system. And one of the primary ways that applications would be integrated was with proprietary agents. So you just install an agent on the web server, it would inspect all traffic, and it would write a cookie back to a browser, yada, yada. Long story short, the approach was, how do your applications work today? We're going to integrate those applications and do a minimal touch to affect how those applications work. That was usually how we went about implementing access management. somewhere along the way, the SAML standard came out and was highly adopted by cloud single sign-on platforms, and applications and organizations said, you know what, our applications are going to need to change to work with that standard because that's our new platform. We're going to use that, and so the applications need to change. And David's right. I mean, we used to have these developer cookbooks like, hey, you can write this hook to get into the product and all that other jazz, and you have to send it around to application teams. They'd have to, they didn't want to do it. And nowadays it's an open standard, and integrating applications has become a much less horrific kind of thing.
Yeah, and I'll add to that too, is I think vendors have done, especially a few of them I can think of, but I won't name specifically, have done a really good job of providing documentation for their APIs and their products. Let me pick on Okta. I think Okta does a great job with their portal, right? It has all the information you need, and I feel like Ping does the same, and SailPoint has a great portal. I just think that a lot of these vendors have recognized that they need to get developers on board and have taken steps to provide adequate training and documentation available so that people can get up to speed on the product that much quicker.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the application platforms that are out there today, and platforms including SaaS applications, vendor supported applications, and platforms like web servers have ready built setups so you can integrate with SAML IDP, and that makes it a lot easier for the application developers to go ahead and integrate.
Right. Next one on the list is from the very well-named individual, goes by the name of Jeff, that he's thankful that we're on the way towards achieving passwordless authentication, which, like you said before, I think we've been waiting for that for 10, 15 years. It seems like it keeps getting closer every year. Maybe 2020 will be the year of not having to type in the password as much, at least. So I like that one. Another one, I'm thankful IAM involves business discussions, like how companies are interacting with their customers and their employees. That's from Luis. Definitely, it's a conversation that's taking place now. It's not hidden behind the veil of IT. There's companies that are now thinking about, okay, well, how are we going to manage these identities? It's core to the product that they're developing or to the services that they're offering.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, I think that IAM has always been a business integration project. It's middleware. It's connecting all of your applications, and if you're going to do that, there's a business component. There's an organizational change management component, and like you said, if you have anything that's outward facing with your partners or especially your customers, you've got to make the experience one that's palatable.
Yep. And the last one, and probably my favorite, this comes, I'm not sure who wrote this in, it was anonymous, but video games adopting cross-save features across multiple platforms so I can play the same account on different systems. Right on. Now I can play on Xbox or PlayStation or PC or whatever it may be. Hell yeah.
I have no comment. I don't play video games, so I'm not against video games. In fact, my kids got into playing Fortnite, and I guess I was against it at first, and then I realized that I kind of was being like my parents were, where if they didn't like what I was doing, they would just make me feel like not good about it. So I said, all right, I'm going to try to, not play it with them because I didn't want to play the video games, but at least not get on their case about it. So maybe that's just I should save that for Father's Day. I'm not a big video game person. I never really got into it.
I'm a gamer. I used to play quite a bit. I don't have as much time these days, but I still game. Try to get in a couple rounds of League of Legends or World of Warcraft or raid here and there. So shout out to my other gamers that are out there. And I think that's probably a good one that we can close out the.
Well, I do want to say one other thing.
Oh, do you have one other? Okay.
It's not a thing. Well, yeah, I'm kind of thankful for this. So as much as I love open standards and proprietary, I don't think is a great thing. The Apple ecosystem is something else. I just got a new iPhone, and it's only been a few years since I upgraded, but switching from the old phone to the new phone was like you basically just took a picture of the old phone from the new phone and it brought all the information over. And so again, I'm on this Apple ecosystem where I have the phone, I've got the laptop, and it is amazing how things go back and forth just using your Apple ID. I mean, I'm pretty thankful for that because it's like you get a new device and you're up and running in a half hour or something. Whereas I remember the days of getting a new PC maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago. It was like a major effort to move everything from your old world to your new world. You didn't even want to get rid of the old one for a while because you wanted to make sure that you got everything.
Yeah, I feel like the cloud has been the key driver on that. I try to put as much stuff I have in the cloud, so I'm constantly shifting devices and trying new stuff out. And I've got my laptop build process down to about an hour, including download time for all the different apps that I tend to use, just because everything's in the cloud and it's easy enough to think that way. But yeah, I remember the old days where if you were on one ecosystem, you couldn't transfer everything, and then Google Contacts rolled around. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever. Now I don't have to worry about my contacts being on my SIM card, things like that. So yeah, there's dongles now that sometimes the vendors will put in if you're switching from Android to Apple or vice versa. So yeah, it's the user experience of that whole process has definitely got better. I would love to take a look at what the schema looks like for an iCloud ID. There has to be a ton of information back there to move that back and forth.
They've got a lot of smart people working with the company.
Sure do. Anything else?
Not this year.
Not this year. All right. Well, I think we can probably wrap up then our 2019 Thanksgiving Identity at the Center extravaganza. And happy Thanksgiving to you and yours, Jim, and everyone else that's out there. And we'll be talking to you guys in the next one.
You've been listening to the Identity at the Center podcast. To access all episodes, visit identityatthecenter.com.